DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone, your Utah Jazz, 82 games down, on to the offseason. You were just talking, we had Mike Weir on earlier this week. Get that wherever you get your podcast. Great conversation with Mike Weir about golf, where he stands in his career, how long he plans on playing, what he thought of Rory winning. And then the best part is just the whole thing about the Champions Dinner and just being out on the balcony. And you were talking about how you like to be a fly on the wall, PK. That's a great summertime topic. Where in the sports world would you like to be a fly on the wall? One place, Masters Champion Dinner. Absolutely. That would be awesome. Let's just go over and listen to Jack Nicklaus and Mike Weir talk, and that'd be spectacular. Another place, this summer, I think a lot of Jazz fans would be like to be sitting in an office with Austin Ainge and Danny Ainge and Jay-Z and Ryan Smith would probably pop in. The coaches, I wonder how many coaches. I mean, obviously Will could be there, but maybe some of the assistant coaches would be there too. Obviously there'd be some scouts and that in there. And to sit in those rooms, whether it's 3 people or whether it's 30, and just like listen to them talk and weigh the positives and the negatives, We're old enough. We've seen different generations. Obviously, Joe Ingles came on this show and turned himself into one of our favorites pretty quickly. He was the 5th forward. They had to sit in a room and think, okay, who can play these forward spots? And he's probably the 5th guy as kind of a wing guy. And a lot of nights he'll sit, and some nights he'll come in, and if somebody's out, he becomes the 4th guy, and maybe he plays 10 to 12 minutes. And plus, he's Australian, and Dante Exum, this high pick, that could help. Yeah, that's a good idea. And then pretty soon, Exum's hurt, but Joe's. It's like I remember you saying on the air one day at Curdy, he goes, you know what I noticed with Joe? When they're throwing him the ball, it's not quite to him yet, and it's obvious he already knows where he's going to throw it next. And he just throws these touch passes. Just catch it, boom, and the ball moves and somebody gets an open shot. And pretty soon he's the 4th guy. Pretty soon he's the 3rd guy. And pretty soon he's a runner-up in the 6th man of the year voting to Jordan Clarkson. So where are they going to slot these guys? It would be awesome to hear them talk about how much money they can afford to give Kessler because of how much money they think they're going to have to give George because of how much money they think they still need to put together the rest of the team. I mean, and to listen to them knock that back and forth. Well, if we do this, we can do that. But if we do that, then we'll have to do this,
Yeah.
And let's run all that by David Locke right now. The radio voice of Utah Jazz joins us. David, good morning.
A Friday morning. David and Patrick. I mean, there are guarantees in life. Death,
here we go.
Taxes, and DJ and PK on a Friday morning. And you know what? You're both delightful human beings. And I've changed something in my life. I've stopped with the innocuous, feckless, vapid, hi, how are you? And instead, I ask people when I see them, I stop and I say, what's the most exciting thing in your life? So David James, what is the most exciting thing in your life?
My wife is getting better after surgery. She's not good.
That's awesome.
But she's better. So
that's awesome. That's great. Patrick Kinahan, what is the most exciting thing in your life?
I go to the basics to be able to walk. So many people can't walk. And if you can't walk, that just destroys your ability to enjoy it at a level that I do. So I never take for granted the simple ability to be able to walk, to exercise, to play golf, to stand and do the things that a lot of folks can't do. And so I take it down at the bottom level. And if I got that, then I can build upon that and enjoy some other stuff that may come. But the essence, the day-to-day stuff, if I'm cool day-to-day, well, then obviously I'm going to be great when I'm going on an around-the-world vacation, which I'll never take. But you get the point I'm trying to make.
Yep. I love it. I ask this all the time now, and I think it's really interesting. I love it because it's actually super selfish. I'm an extrovert, so I get somebody else telling me what makes them happy, which gives me energy, so it's actually super selfish. But somebody the other day answered that their ability to think ahead and their ability to improve. And I was like, oh, that's an awesome answer. So, yeah, I love it. Thank you, both of you, for sharing. I greatly appreciate it.
David, let's start with a question I think that everyone's trying to assess. The Jazz young guys, especially the ones they've drafted, and the ones they've been developing, do you have a really good feel for who the Jazz coaches and executives really trust to play at least 20 or 25 minutes a game next year on a 50-win team, if that's the goal, whether they get there or not? But they feel comfortable plugging them into how many of the guys are they sure of, how many guys are they questioning, how many guys are they ruling out? After 82 games of investing, a lot of losing and checking these guys out, what do you think they think about how to plug these guys into next year's roster?
So I don't want to make this – I'm a little nervous to answer this question because the way things go viral with my friend Angie Mentic living it right now. You had an interesting word in there, which was questioning, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't you say the word questioning? I think they question whether any of them can play 25 minutes on a 50-win team, including Keontae. Like, I'm not trying to be negative, but one, the first premise is trying to win what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's led to great development, and that's why you do it, is really easy. Have you seen these games these last few days?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Like, we've never done that. Denver, San Antonio regular season, our guys have never done that. None of our guys have. Jaren's won one playoff series. It's the only guy in the whole roster who's won a playoff series that's going to be on the roster next year in all likelihood. I mean, or core guys, right? So, I mean, I think we should be legitimately questioning whether any of them can. Like, I don't know if it's a really good metric or not, but for 2 years in a row on Taylor Snar's dunks and threes, Keontae George is the worst defensive player in the NBA. So I don't know if that's fair. Last year he played without a center, and it wasn't a team constructed to play good defensively. But if you're using the phrase questioning, I'm certain that there's a lot of questioning of whether Keontae George is capable defensively to play for a 50-win team. Because if he's actually the worst defensive player in the NBA for a third year in a row, we're not winning 50 games. I can promise you that. So I'm not trying to be like dramatic or talk shock jockey. That's an old phrase no one uses anymore. But I think there's a serious question on every single one of them of whether they can play. And I don't think that Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, Cody Williams, and maybe even Bryce Sensabaugh can play 25 minutes on a 50-win team yet. But I'd also ask you this. Of the 50-win teams in the NBA, how many players are playing on those rosters that are third and fourth year guys, second, third year guys, and then also low draft picks? I don't think there's that many, right? San Antonio being the exception, but they also have Victor. But Denver has 0, unless maybe they have somebody. Peyton's in his 4th year now. But I think Denver basically has 0. Oklahoma City at this point might have 0, other than A.J. Mitchell. So that's a second-year player. And that's a pretty easy ecosystem to step into. That's the other thing, right? You go add 2 or 3 good players, and now what you're asking Bryce Sensabaugh and Kyle Filipowski and Isaiah Collier to do is so much more narrow-focused. Maybe they can do it way better than what we're asking them to do right now.
Yeah. Understood on that. I get that point. That's a well-deserved and respected point that you make. You've spoken when we get to this point in the calendar that there has been for you individually an emotional letdown and sort of an emotional hangover with the end, because there's this buzz and there's this adrenaline and all that stuff, and then it just comes to a screeching halt, and you've had a few days that you need to adjust. I'm wondering, and not just you specifically, but as far as the team, the guys that you're around, is it a little bit different this year, knowing that there's optimism for next year that we haven't seen in a number of years?
I don't think I'll ever forget the day in Atlanta. Like the singular mood change. I can't remember where we were when the trade happened. You could look at the calendar and I probably will remember, but we flew to Atlanta after the trade. And the next day we practiced at Georgia Tech, pretty long walk back. And I'll never forget that practice, Keontae just wanted to talk, and Lowry just wanted to talk. Like, I talked to both them longer that day than any day all year, and probably more that day than all days combined for the rest of the year. They just, what do you think? And what are your takes? And they just want everyone's thoughts on it. They couldn't get enough from it. And then I happened to walk back that day with the coaching staff, and they were just bubbling. And I'll never forget the mood change that happened in Atlanta. We were in Indiana the day before. I know because I know where Austin Ainge and Will Hardy went to dinner to discuss the trade the night before. So we were in Indiana and then headed to Atlanta. And I'll never forget the energy change. And that carried through for the rest of the year. I mean, there was some ridiculousness that took place this year, right? And it got kind of comical at times, but that energy and that trade made everything okay. I can't imagine what it would have been like to go through the last 2.5 months of the season with no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, just begging for Cooper Flagg again. Right? Like, last year, I do remember going through it and like, okay, well, we got a 20%, 18% chance to get Cooper Flagg. Like, we're doing an awful lot for 18% chance. And it turned out that actually we really want to get into it. Last year's losing might turn out to be some of the most important, because the difference between Ace Bailey and the 6th, 7th, and 8th pick may turn out to be really dramatic. And so the fact that we had the worst record in the NBA and could the worst case scenario slide to 5 and walk out with Ace Bailey may turn out to be an incredibly important franchise moment. So as was probably getting to 4 or 5 this year. So all of that stuff was worth it and necessary, but to have done it without a light at the end of the tunnel would have been really hard. The mood change in Atlanta that day was just incredible.
You have any insight into Walker Kessler, into what lengths they will go to sign him, or does everyone just have to sit around on pins and needles and wait? Because in a weird way, that trade you talk about with Jaren Jackson Jr., in my mind, makes it all the more imperative to bring Walker back. So you could have 3 7-footers. You could go from the bottom of the league, they're either 30 or 29 defensively, every year, just year after year after year, all of a sudden they could be elite. They would have the size and the length. My gosh, they'd be a nightmare to deal with.
So I'm going to back up 2 things I've heard you say already today, so I'm just kind of agreeing with you. So one is Detroit this year had the largest advantage of any team in the history of the league in the restricted area. And I think it's a signal of a shift in the game right now. So we went through an era of basketball where shooting threes and being able to shoot the long ball was really what kind of separated teams. And Quinn Snyder's teams with a shot distribution of 40-40-20, 40% of your shots at the rim, 40% of your shots at 3 and 20 was gaining themselves a 2 or 3 point advantage every night in the regular season and winning games because their shot distribution was better than everybody else. I think the new age, we hear about the possession thing all the time right now from the coaches. I actually think everyone's onto that. There are 3 things that I think are the new age of the league. One is this idea of winning an area of the floor dramatically. I don't know if you can do the 3-point line anymore. So Detroit winning the restricted area. 2, the 5 best rim defenses in the NBA. So 5 best teams defending shots at the rim are Detroit 1 seed, Oklahoma City 1 seed, Boston 2 seed, San Antonio 2 seed, and Minnesota back-to-back Western Conference Finals. Those are the 5 best teams in the NBA defending the rim. The third one is the best offensive teams are all offensive rebounding teams, which is the possession battle. Those are all 3 areas are areas where we could be elite if we have Walker, Kessler, Jaren Jackson. Now, what's interesting about that is neither of them are elite rebounders. Walker's above average, Jaren's below average, and Lowry's well below average. And Ace is not a great rebounder. So it is interesting. We just decide that size is going to rebound. There is going to have to be a little bit of a commitment from the players because they've actually never been very good at that. Walker's okay. I think he's above average, but not statistically. All right. So that's first thing. So I'm backing you up. Second thing, Walker. I do think getting Walker back is vital because you got to see if this is going to work. And Jaren Jackson's a power forward, not a center. Jaren can play some center and will probably play Jaren as a 5-out center, which gets into a very interesting question of what we do about backup center and how we allocate those minutes, depending on what we think we're doing with Jaren. And that probably will be dictated a little bit by the draft. But I do think Walker's vital to bring back, and I think Walker's really good. but we are in an era, as you said earlier, and this was where you were really astute. You cannot just. It used to be like they want 30, you're going to give them 20. We'll just decide at 27.5 and just throw the extra $3 million around like it doesn't matter. Can't do that anymore. That will prevent you from having another rotation player, and that'll prevent you from winning a playoff series because money is so tight on the aprons now. And so these negotiations are going to get much more difficult today than they've ever been because the compromise of just, oh, well, we'll figure it. And the other one is we'll pay him now and figure it out later was the other approach that used to really work. It didn't work so well in Derek Favors for the Jazz, but it generally worked pretty well. And that is a lot more difficult to do now because if you go over the aprons, you're so restricted in your player movement that it's very difficult for you to be able to move that player. And then you get really caught in a bind. So this is a much more complicated negotiation than it's ever been before.
Last time the Jazz as a franchise.
And let me flip it. That was from the Jazz perspective. From Walker's perspective, it's a little iffy too. And that is, when was the last time you can think of a restricted free agent moving teams?
Guys, mostly
I got to go find it. It's got to be 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So the idea that someone's going to give Walker a 4-year, $120 million offer as a restricted free agent, like, I just think it's unlikely. I mean, I think the 3 teams are like Brooklyn might do it. Atlanta will have some cap room, and some people think Chicago. Like, yeah, I don't really see like Brooklyn deciding to eat up their cap space on Walker and pivoting off Nick Claxton. Atlanta seems to have something right now with a Kongu. I don't know why they would do Walker at that number. And I just don't see Chicago. So then suddenly Walker doesn't have any market, and the Jazz are holding firm to their number. And the Jazz are offering, let's say the Jazz are offering 4 years, 100. Like, are you really walking from $100 million over principal? Really?
PK's shaking his head because his mother would come back from the grave and just bash him upside the skull.
I mean,
where do I sign?
It's a really tricky negotiation because it's somewhat built to make both sides unhappy.
Yeah, maybe there's some satisfaction. That's what gets it across the line.
Kuminga and Golden State.
Yeah, half a loaf. Let's do it.
Right. So let's hope. I mean, there's been some murmur that like the league kind of thinks there's some people in the league who think it's done, but I don't believe that.
What's done?
The Jazz and Walker kind of understand where each other are and they're going to get it done. But I don't know. Okay. I don't think that's true.
Okay.
Well, that'd be intriguing. I mean, there was that whole rumor about the Pacers offering up a couple of picks trying to make it happen, and that didn't go anywhere. And the fact it didn't go anywhere might suggest, well, maybe there's been some talk and they realize they're in the same arena and there's going to be a meeting of the minds.
So I don't know how that works. So there's no question. Let's just be totally clear on this. If the Pacers traded for Zubac, they asked about Walker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like there's just no that would be negligent not to, right?
Right.
So okay, so
yeah.
The rumor is clearly true. The thing that I think is interesting here is I don't know if you can pull this up really quickly at Sport Tracker where you look at this, but I think Zubac makes 17 or 18. So I don't know this, but I'm just going to guess that there's back channels. Like no one's doing stuff without. This is just logic. I'm certain that if Indiana was interested in Walker, Indiana also had a reason to call Walker's agent on 3 other topics and go, oh, by the way, what do you expect Walker to get in the offseason? Right? Like you'd have to do that. If you're in their position, you'd have to do that. That just is logical. Well, I'm guessing that their number was way higher than 17, and Indiana said no thank you because I'd rather have Walker than Zubac.
Zubac this year made almost 18.9. Next year it goes to 20.3, and then it goes to 21.8. And so he's got 2 years left at just over $20 million.
Right, and Walker comes back and says, I want 25 or 30. Indiana's like, yeah, we'll trade for Zubac.
Right.
The problem for Walker is that just took one of the teams off the market.
Yeah. David, we got to go.
I don't know that. This is just like I do enough business. Like with Lockdown, I do enough business deals that this is kind of how you just do deals, right? Like,
right.
You're calling both parties. You're asking where everybody is. You're figuring out what's going on. You're taking your best options. Mm-hmm. There's zero chance that people in the billion-dollar industry of the NBA are doing this blind.
David, you didn't wait to do this when you were starting Locked On. You were doing this sitting at bagel shops and doing radio in the previous century. I know this firsthand.
Yeah, when I screwed you on your first deal, sure. Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Right. And when I told Gordon Monson that, like, come on, I'm going to make you the most powerful person in town. You don't need money. You just need power.
And it worked in both
I knew
cases.
I never trusted him.
We got the money later. We'll wait for Locke to
It worked
leave.
out. It worked out for you guys.
It did.
My dad,
Yeah,
my
funny
dad gave
story.
me a great piece of advice in life, by the way, on money, for anyone who's listening. My dad told me, like, there'll be twice in your life, 2 or 3 times in your life where money will actually matter. The rest of the time, you're just nickel and diming. So make sure you make the right decisions on those 2 or 3. And don't worry about it the other times.
There you go.
You didn't. You got nickel and dimed by me, and then you did just fine, DJ.
Yep, that's a true story.
And PK, I was ignorant to brilliance. I've openly admitted it. I was ignorant to brilliance.
Well, it worked out too.
It all worked out.
Right.
All right, Dave, we got to run. Hey, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again next week.
You guys are really exceptionally good at what you do. And it's honestly, I make it a little bit of a joke every day when I start off, but I really do enjoy chatting with you guys. You guys are great.
Well, we love having you on. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right, there's David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz. Pablo Mastroianni, RSL head coach, coming up at 9 o'clock. Then a scouting report on the Vegas Knights. Playoff series for the Mammoth gets underway Sunday night at 8 o'clock in Las Vegas. That's coming up at 9:30. Stay with us.